In the forgotten town where the forest loomed like a specter and the moon cast long shadows upon its winding lanes, there stood a house. Its presence was an enigma, a relic of a forgotten era, shrouded in mystery and steeped in dark. Sarah Montgomery, a woman weary from the weight of her troubles, stumbled upon it one fateful afternoon, her heart heavy with the burden of a shattered life. The decision to purchase the house on Whispering Lane came after a bitter divorce left Sarah adrift, searching for a sanctuary to heal her wounded spirit. The moment she laid eyes on the old house, with its weather-worn facade and ivy-covered walls, she felt a strange pull, an inexplicable longing to unravel the secrets hidden within its crumbling walls. But from the moment Sarah crossed the threshold, she knew something was amiss. The air hung heavy with the scent of decay, and the shadows seemed to dance with a life of their own. Still, she pushed aside her misgivings, eager to bury herself in the task of making the house a home. As the days turned into nights, however, Sarah's unease only grew. Strange occurrences became commonplace, a flicker of movement out of the corner of her eye, the sensation of being watched, even when she was alone, and whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. She tried to dismiss them as figments of her imagination, but deep down, she knew there was something sinister lurking within the house. One night, as Sarah lay in bed, a cold wind swept through the room, chilling her to the bone. She pulled the covers tighter around her, trying to ward off the icy tendrils that seemed to snake their way into her very soul. And then she heard it, the sound of footsteps, soft and deliberate, echoing down the hallway. Sarah's heart raced as she strained to listen, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The footsteps drew closer, each one like a nail being driven into her coffin. And then they stopped outside her door, leaving her paralyzed with fear. With trembling hands, Sarah reached for the lamp on her bedside table, her fingers fumbling in the darkness. But before she could switch it on, she saw it. A figure standing in the doorway, its form obscured by the shadows. A chill ran down her spine as she realized it was not human, but something far more sinister. The figure stepped into the room, its movements slow and deliberate. Sarah's mouth went dry as she tried to scream, but no sound escaped her lips. She watched in horror as the figure drew closer, its features twisted and contorted like a nightmare come to life. And then it spoke, a voice like gravel scraping against stone, filled with a malevolence that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. It whispered her name, its words dripping with malice, and Sarah felt a wave of terror wash over her. With a sudden burst of courage, Sarah leapt out of bed and ran for the door, but it slammed shut before she could reach it, trapping her inside with the creature. She turned to face it, her heart pounding in her chest, and saw its eyes, dark voids that seemed to devour the light around them. In that moment, Sarah knew she was doomed. The creature reached out a hand, its fingers elongated and skeletal, and she felt a cold dread grip her soul. With a final guttural moan, it lunged forward, its icy touch sending shockwaves of pain through her body. Sarah's screams echoed through the house, but there was no one there to hear them. As her life slipped away, she realized the true horror of her new home. The shadows that lurked within its walls, waiting to claim their next victim. And as darkness consumed her, she knew she would join them, forever lost in the depths of the haunted house on Whispering Lane. But Sarah's story was not the first to be swallowed by the darkness that dwelled within the house. Over the years, countless souls had been drawn to its cursed halls, each one meeting a fate more gruesome than the last. Their echoes lingered, trapped between the realms of the living and the dead, their whispers a warning to all who dared to venture near. And so, the house on Whispering Lane remained a silent sentinel. Once upon a time, in a small town nestled deep within the misty woods, there stood an old house with a dark past. The locals whispered tales of its eerie history, claiming it was haunted by the restless spirits of those who had met tragic ends within its walls, despite the warnings. One daring man named Jonathan decided to purchase the house, drawn in by its mysterious allure. Jonathan, a man of strong will and adventurous spirit, had always been fascinated by the supernatural. He relished the idea of living in a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thin, eager to experience the thrill of encountering ghosts. From the moment Jonathan stepped foot inside the house, he felt a chill run down his spine. The air seemed heavy with a sense of foreboding, and shadows danced along the walls as if alive, pushing off his unease as mere nerves. Jonathan set about making the house his own, hoping to turn it into a cozy sanctuary away from the bustle of the outside world. However, as the days passed, strange occurrences began to plague Jonathan's new home. It started with subtle noises, creaks and groans that seemed to emanate from the very foundations of the house. Then came the whispers, faint, indistinct voices that echoed through the halls at night, their words unintelligible yet undeniably unsettling. Jonathan tried to rationalize these events, attributing them to the old age of the house and the creaks and groans inherent to such a structure. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister was at play. One particularly stormy night, Jonathan awoke to find himself bathed in an otherworldly glow. Peering out of his window, he saw a procession of ghostly figures gliding through the mist-shrouded woods. Their faces twisted in agony as they beckoned him to join. Frozen with fear, Jonathan watched as they disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind an eerie silence that seemed to permeate the very air. As the days turned into weeks, the strange occurrences only grew more frequent and more unsettling. Objects would move on their own accord, disappearing from one room only to reappear in another as if guided by an unseen. Doors would slam shut of their own volition, trapping Jonathan in rooms with no apparent means of escape. As Jonathan's torment continued unabated, the house seemed to grow increasingly malevolent, its dark presence suffocating him at every turn. Shadows slithered across the walls like serpents, and the air grew thick with the stench of decay. Though no longer able to deny the reality of the supernatural forces at play, Jonathan's mind began to unravel under the relentless assault of fear and paranoia. One night, as he lay in bed, Jonathan heard the faint sound of whispers drifting through the darkness. At first, he tried to ignore them, chalking them up to his overactive imagination. But as the whispers grew louder and more insistent, he realized with a sinking feeling that they were coming from within the room itself. Trembling with fear, Jonathan watched in horror as the walls seemed to pulse and writhe, as if alive with some unseen force. Shadows coalesced into sinister shapes, their eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. And then, with a sudden, sickening lurch, the walls seemed to close in around him, trapping him in a suffocating embrace. Unable to move, unable to scream, Jonathan could only watch helplessly as the room twisted and contorted around him, morphing into a nightmarish labyrinth of shifting corridors and endless hallways. Each step he took seemed to bring him further from escape, deeper into the heart of the house's dark secrets. And then, just when Jonathan thought he could take no more, he found himself standing before a door that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. With a sense of dread gnawing at his insides, he reached out to grasp the handle, only to recoil in horror as it burned his flesh with an icy touch. But it was too late. The door swung open of its own accord, revealing a chamber bathed in a sickly green light. And there, standing at the center of the room, was the ghostly figure that had haunted Jonathan's nightmares, its eyes blazing with unholy fire, its twisted grin sending shivers down his spine. With a blood-curdling shriek, the ghost lunged forward, its spectral claws tearing through Jonathan's flesh-like paper. Agony engulfed him as he felt his very soul being torn asunder, consumed by the ravenous hunger of the house's insatiable. And as Jonathan's lifeless body crumpled to the floor, the echoes of his screams mingled with the sinister laughter of the spirits that had claimed him as their own. For in the cursed halls of the haunted house, death was not the end. It was only the beginning of an eternity of torment and suffering. At the ripe age of 26, I finally accomplished a monumental milestone. I bought my very own house. It marked the end of almost 8 years spent living with roommates, a period during which I came to cherish seclusion and independence. Thus, acquiring a home for myself was not just a mere transaction. It symbolized a significant achievement, a culmination of years of hard work and perseverance. The house I purchased was nestled in a neighboring town, roughly a 2-hour drive from my previous abode. Unlike the bustling urban landscape I was accustomed to, this town boasted a smaller scale, with fewer buildings and a greater expanse of natural beauty. The neighborhoods here were defined by their spaciousness, with houses scattered amidst vast fields of trees and grass. My new home was no exception to this idyllic setting. It stood modestly amidst a forest, a few miles removed from the town's bustling center. As I embarked on the journey of moving in, I found myself enveloped in a sense of anticipation and trepidation. The solitude that surrounded me felt both liberating and unsettling, like stepping into the unknown. On the day of the move, the town seemed to be holding its breath, as if waiting in silent anticipation for my arrival. Despite the absence of familiar faces, I forged ahead, unloading boxes from the rental van with determination. The sun dipped low on the horizon as I labored away, each box a testament to my newfound independence. But just as I was nearing the end of my task, a sudden interruption shattered the tranquility of the moment. There, standing on my porch, was a man, a stranger whose presence seemed to materialize out of thin air. Startled, I took a step back, unsure of how to react. His smile was warm and welcoming, but there was something disconcerting about the way he appeared, as if he had emerged from the very depths of the forest itself. Introducing himself as my new neighbor, the man extended a hand in greeting. Despite my lingering unease, I reciprocated the gesture, eager to establish a sense of camaraderie in this unfamiliar territory. Yet, as he spoke, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. How had he managed to approach my house undetected? And why did his presence seem to cast a shadow over the surrounding landscape? As quickly as he had appeared, the man departed, leaving me to ponder the strangeness of our encounter. With a heavy heart, I resumed my task, unpacking boxes and arranging furniture with a sense of urgency. Nightfall was fast approaching, and I was keen to settle into my new surroundings before darkness descended. But fate had other plans in store for me. As I busied myself with assembling my bed frame, a sharp knock at the door jolted me from my reverie. Heart pounding, I cautiously approached the door, my senses on high alert. Through the peephole, I caught a glimpse of the same man from earlier, his demeanor now tinged with agitation and desperation. He pleaded to be let in, his voice tinged with urgency. But something in his eyes betrayed a deeper sense of turmoil, as if he were grappling with forces beyond his control. Fear gripped me as I hesitated, unsure of what to do. Should I trust this stranger or heed the warnings of my gut instinct? Before I could make a decision, the man's behavior took a sudden turn for the worse. With a final, desperate glance into the darkness of the forest, he bolted away, disappearing into the shadows without a trace. Shaken to the core, I reached for the phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed the number for emergency services. Yet by the time the authorities arrived, the man had vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but a lingering sense of unease. Despite their best efforts, they were unable to locate any trace of him, nor could anyone in the town recall seeing him before. It was as if he had never existed at all, a ghostly apparition haunting the edges of my consciousness.